I threw 6 of the world's smartest AI models at a simple real-world task, and all but one completely fell apart. And no, it wasn't the model the benchmarks told me would win. And in that chaos, one model didn't just survive, it thrived. That model is Claude Opus 4.5, and what I found shocked me way more than any leaderboard ever has. Alright, before we get lost in drama, let's set the stage. Because Claude Opus 4.5 didn't just drop. It landed right after Gemini, when half of the internet was already out of breath from back-to-back model releases. Everyone was still wiping their forehead, and suddenly bam, another heavyweight enters the ring. But Opus 4.5 isn't just trying to win the Hype Olympics. It is doing something more interesting, doubling down on the thing Claude has always been quietly great at, staying on task during long, messy real-world workflows. You know how most AI models are like those friends who get super excited to help, then get distracted halfway through? Claude Opus 4.1 is the opposite. It is the friend who shows up with a clipboard, remembers what you said 20 minutes ago, and somehow keeps the entire plan straight, even when everything gets chaotic. And this is where the personality analogy comes in, the one I want you to picture throughout this whole video. AI models are starting to behave like different employees you'd hire for different jobs. In this analogy, Gemini is the big picture strategist, the person who walks into the room, scans everything, and says, "Here is the story we're trying to tell." ChatGPT is the clean room architect, very structured, very logical, amazing when the inputs are perfect and also the requirements are clear. And Claude is reliable project manager, the one who can juggle moving parts, manage messiness, revisit decisions, and keep a long-running process on track without losing the thread. And Opus 4.5 pushes that project manager personality even further. One of the biggest upgrades you feel immediately is how it handles long, sprawling conversations, especially when you're generating something big like PowerPoint and Notion doc. Older models, including Claude's previous versions, hit that dreaded window context wall and you're halfway through creating a 20-slide presentation and boom, hard stop. The model forgets everything. You're back to square one. Opus 4.5 doesn't just avoid that wall, it behaves like it's actually aware of it. It actually speeds itself up when it senses the context window is getting tight. I've seen it literally shift gears mid-task, saying something like, "Alright, let's wrap this part efficiently so we can finish." That is not just smart, it is useful. That is the feeling of working with a model that has instincts. And when the context genuinely does run out, Opus 4.5 quietly does something genius behind the scene. It hands the baton to Sonnet 4.5, compresses the earlier conversations, and let the work continue without you losing everything. Is it perfect? No. Some nouns get compressed, but it is infinitely better than the feeling of hitting that brick. And honestly, the single improvement leads to something bigger, something that matters way more, scoring 3 points higher on the benchmark. You start getting reliable finished outputs, no half-finished files, not weirdly abandoned tasks, not "sorry, I can continue," real reusable Excel sheets, real documents, real PowerPoints. That is why I say Opus 4.5 feels like hiring someone who actually gets the job done. It is done even when the job is messy. But here's things get really interesting, because saying Opus feels useful is one thing, putting it onto a real-world test, a test most models completely fail, is another thing. It's something else entirely. And that's exactly where we're heading next. In the next section, I'm going to show you the real-world challenges that broke every major model except one, and what that tells us about the future of AI. Alright, let's get into the test. The one that sparks the entire video, because benchmarks are cute. They make great headlines, but real work, real messy business, critical work, that's where models reveal who they really are. And here's the setup. A person runs a Christmas tree business. Peak season, hundreds of trees moving in and moving out, multiple species, multiple shipments, and like a lot of small businesses, not everything is digital. We're talking handwritten shipping manifests, messy receipt sheets, kind of paper you are not even sure if the 4 is actually a 4 or someone sneezed while writing it. It is a perfect chaos, and that's exactly why it is ideal way to test real-world model performance. Here's the job I gave every model. Extract every number clearly from the shipping, then recognize them. No fancy prompting, just read the numbers, understand them, and do the math. Give clean answer, and let me tell you, it was like watching 6 employees walk into the same office and react in 6 totally different ways. Claude 4.5 wasn't flawless, but it was the only model that came with a result close enough to be actually useful. It didn't hallucinate missing trees, it didn't force numbers to match, it didn't panic when the tallies didn't line up perfectly. Instead, it did something subtle but incredibly important. It acknowledged uncertainty and also flagged them. That is what real-world reliability looks like. Now let's go to Gemini 3. The strategist gets lost in the story. Now Gemini 3 actually did something impressive. It recognized the tally marks, which is way harder than people think. But Gemini 3 did the most Gemini thing possible. It tried to make the numbers tell a coherent story even when the story didn't exist. It wanted everything to feel neat, to have a narrative arc, and to make sense. And in a messy database like this, that instinct becomes a liability. I wrote a beautiful explanation, but the math underneath didn't line up. Now, let's go to ChatGPT 5.1 Pro, the architect in a mud pit. I've said it before, ChatGPT 5.1 Pro is brilliant when the world is clean, structured, labeled, and logical. And about this task, it's not like that. It's miscount the tallies completely. Then, instead of wrestling with ambiguity, it force reconciled everything into a one-to-one match under the assumption that the documents must be literally consistent. Great instincts if you're building software, not great if you're dealing with messy real-world numbers written with the fading pencil. Okay, now let's talk about how these models fit into real workflows. Here's the truth most people don't talk about. The future isn't about picking the right model, it's about building multi-model workflows. I'll give you an example straight from my own daily routine. When I'm working with deck, and I do a lot of decks, I often start with Claude Opus 4.5. Why? Because I need the structure to hold. I need a logic of the story to stay consistent across multiple iterations. I need a model that won't forget slide 3 when we're editing slide 17. Claude is amazing at the bones of the work, but when I need visuals, and also visual polish, color harmony, layout redefinement, I run the draft through Notebook LM, powered by Gemini. Claude gives me the skeleton, Gemini gives me the skin. 2 models, 1 workflow, and also massive productivity boost. Same thing goes for writing, drafting in Claude, polish in Gemini, technical check in ChatGPT. Vision or branding concept from an image model. You start to think like a creative director, not a tool user. And for code, Claude is brilliant for multi-file consistency. ChatGPT is fantastic for architecture, refactors, and clean room logic. Gemini sees patterns across big code bases. When you combine them, it feels like having a team of specialists working together, each leaning into their strength. And that is what the Christmas tree test revealed. Not just which model is strongest, but which one can I depend on when the work isn't clean, the data isn't beautiful. And now I want to hear it from you. What's your take on Claude Opus 4.5? Did you run into surprises? Does it become your daily driver? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you want more real world tests, breakdowns, and deep dives into this, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.